The forbidden touch. The first time his hands touched me, I knew I was in trouble. His fingers smooth, strong, and confident traced the curve of my waist, sending a shiver down my spine. The hotel room smelled of expensive cologne and sin, the heavy curtains drawn to keep the world out. My heart pounded so loud I was sure he could hear it. "You're trembling?" he murmured, his British accent thick, luxurious. I was, but not from fear. At 70, Richard Kingsley was twice my age. Yet he moved like a man who had spent a lifetime mastering the art of pleasure. His silver hair was perfectly styled, his jaw sharp, his blue eyes knowing. He was rich, powerful, and devastatingly handsome, the kind of man who made women forget their own names. And I had forgotten mine. My husband, Mark, was a good man, a safe man. But safe had started to feel like a cage. 5 years of marriage, a beautiful daughter, a predictable life. And then Richard walked into the charity gala where I volunteered. One look, one conversation, and I was lost. Now, here I was, naked in his arms, his mouth hot against my neck. "You're so beautiful," he whispered, his hands exploring me like I was a treasure. "I've wanted this since the moment I saw you." I should have stopped him. I should have remembered my wedding ring, my daughter's laughter, my vows. But when his lips found mine, all I could think was, yes. His touch was electric, his experience undeniable. He knew exactly how to make me gasp, how to make me beg. And when he finally took me, it wasn't just sex, it was a revelation. Afterward, as I lay breathless beside him, reality crashed down. What have I done? But even as guilt clawed at me, I knew one thing for sure. I wanted more.
You're hooked, aren't you? Loved this steamy, suspenseful start? Now's the time to hit that like button, drop a comment, subscribe to Top Stories Vault for more scandalous tales, and to our returning vault keepers, welcome back. You legends are the reason we create these thrilling stories. Now, are you ready for more? Keep watching, keep listening, and don't blink. But can you handle the heat?
The moment I stepped out of Richard's penthouse, guilt wrapped around me like a second skin. The elevator doors closed, and I caught my reflection. Cheeks flushed, lips slightly, swollen hair tousled from his hands. I looked like a woman who had just been thoroughly loved, and I had. I pulled out my phone and saw 3 missed calls from my husband. My stomach twisted. I dialed him back, forcing my voice into something light, something normal. "Hey, babe, where are you?" Mark's voice was calm, but I heard the edge. "I called you twice." "I was at the gym," I lied smoothly. "Left my phone in the locker." A pause. Then, "You never go to the gym on Wednesdays." My breath hitched. He was right. I had a routine. Yoga on Mondays, spin class on Fridays. Mark knew my schedule better than I did. "I needed to clear my head," I said, scrambling. "Lily's been fussy all week, and I just needed some time alone." Another pause. Too long. Then softly, "Okay, just let me know next time." Guilt stabbed me. Mark was a good man, a trusting man, and I had just betrayed him in the worst way possible. But then my phone buzzed. A text from Richard. "Tonight. My place." 8 p.m. Just like that, the guilt was drowned out by something hotter, darker. That night, I told Mark I was going to a book club. He barely looked up from his laptop. "Have fun." Richard was waiting when I arrived, a glass of red wine in his hand. He didn't speak, just pulled me into him and kissed me like he owned me. And in that moment, I think he did. But as we lay tangled in his sheets later, my phone buzzed. A call from home. I froze. Richard's fingers traced my bare back. "Ignore it." But I couldn't. What if something was wrong with Lily? I grabbed my phone. "Hello? Where are you?" Mark's voice was sharp. "Lily woke up crying for you. She said she had a nightmare." My heart stopped. I'm just leaving book club now. I'll be home soon." Silence. Then, "Your book club ended an hour ago, Emily." Shit, I had told him the wrong time. Richard watched me amused, like this was all a game. And maybe it was. I lost track of time, I stammered. I'll be there in 20. I hung up my hand, shaking. Richard just smirked. You're a terrible liar, darling. I rushed home, my mind racing. Mark was waiting in the living room, arms crossed. Who were you really with? My blood ran cold. What? I called Sarah. She said book club was canceled tonight. Sarah, my best friend, the one person who would cover for me. But I hadn't even told her about Richard. I swallowed. I didn't go to book club. I went to a bar. Alone. His eyes narrowed. Why? Because I needed space. I burst out, tears welling. Real ones. I love Lily. I love you, but sometimes I just need to breathe. Mark's face softened. He pulled me into a hug. I'm sorry. I didn't realize you felt that way. I buried my face in his chest, sick with guilt. But even as he held me, all I could think about was Richard's hands on me. And the text, waiting on my phone. Tomorrow. Don't make me wait. The next morning, I woke up with Mark's arm draped over me. His breathing was steady, his face relaxed in sleep. The guilt hit me like a brick. What the hell am I doing? But then my phone lit up. Richard. Meet me at noon. The usual place. I deleted the message, my pulse quickening. Richard's penthouse was all sharp edges and cold luxury, just like him. He stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, sipping scotch like this was a business meeting. I don't like sharing, he said without turning around. I froze. What? He finally looked at me, his blue eyes piercing. You're mine now, Emily. I want you out of that marriage. My stomach dropped. I can't just leave. I have a daughter. He smirked, swirling his drink. Every woman says that. Until she doesn't. I should have walked out. But then, he crossed the room, his fingers tilting my chin up. Imagine a life without hiding, without lying. His kiss was possessive, demanding. And God help me, I kissed him back. That night, Mark was quieter than usual. You've been distracted lately, he said over dinner. I forced a smile. Just tired? He studied me, then reached across the table and froze. Oh, no! His fingers brushed my neck right where Richard had left a mark. Mark's face darkened. What's this? My throat went dry. Mosquito bite. It's been itching all day. He didn't believe me. I saw it in his eyes. But he just nodded slowly. Better put some cream on it. The silence that followed was louder than any accusation. 3 days later, I came home to an empty house. No Mark, no Lily. Just a note on the kitchen counter. Gone to my mom's. We need to talk when I get back. My hand shook as I called him, straight to voicemail. Then my phone buzzed. Richard. Tonight. Be ready to choose. The moment I stepped into Richard's penthouse, I knew something was different. The lights were dimmed too low, the air smelled like expensive whiskey, and something else, something dangerous. He stood by the window, his silhouette sharp against the city lights. You're late, he said without turning around. I swallowed. Mark took Lily to his mother's. He knows something's wrong? Richard finally turned his face half in shadow. Good. My stomach twisted. Good. He closed the distance between us, his fingers digging into my hips. It's time to stop pretending, Emily. You don't belong to him anymore. I wanted to pull away, but my body betrayed me, leaning into his touch. Then my phone buzzed. Mark. Richard's grip tightened. Turn it off. Mark had never been the suspicious type. That's why it took me 3 days to notice the car, a black sedan parked across the street every time I left the house. At first, I thought it was a neighbor. Then I saw it outside the coffee shop. The gym. My blood ran cold. I called Richard in a panic. Someone's following me. He didn't even pause. I'll handle it. Richard booked us a suite under a fake name. You're being paranoid, he murmured against my neck as he pushed me onto the bed. But when I closed my eyes, all I could see was Mark's face when he found out. Then Richard's hands were everywhere, his mouth silencing my doubts. Afterward, he lit a cigar. I had my people look into your tale. Private investigator. Hired by your husband last week. The room spun. Oh, God. Richard exhaled, smoke calm as death. Like I said, I'll handle it. I barely slept that night. At 3 a.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. A man's voice, rough and unfamiliar. Stay away from Kingsley if you know what's good for your family. The line went dead. The next morning, I stood frozen outside Lily's daycare, my hands shaking as I gripped my phone. A man came by asking about your daughter, the director had said. He claimed to be a relative, but something felt off. My blood turned to ice. Richard answered on the first ring. Emily? Did you send someone to my daughter's school? My voice was a razor-thin whisper, a beat of silence, then laughter. Rich, smooth, utterly terrifying. Darling, if I wanted to frighten you, I wouldn't be so subtle. I picked Lily up early, clutching her small hand like a lifeline. Mommy, you're squeezing too tight, she whined. I forced myself to loosen my grip, but my eyes kept darting to every passing car, every shadow. When we got home, the front door was unlocked. I always lock it. Inside the house was too quiet. Nothing seemed out of place until I saw the envelope on the kitchen counter. No name, no stamp. Just one sentence scrawled in block letters. Last chance to walk away. Richard's penthouse smelled like gun oil and expensive cologne when I stormed in. Who the hell is threatening my family? I slammed the envelope onto his desk. He didn't even glance at it. Sit down. I don't want to sit. Sit. The command cracked like a whip. I sat. He poured 2 fingers of bourbon, pushed it toward me. You're being naive if you think our little affair is the only game in town. What does that mean? It means, he said slowly, your husband owes money to very dangerous people, and they've just decided your leverage. Mark was waiting when I got home, his face drawn. Where's Lily? He asked immediately. Asleep at your mom's. I threw the envelope at him. Care to explain? His face went pale. Where did you get this? Someone left it in our unlocked house, Mark. Who did you piss off? He ran a hand through his hair, a nervous habit I'd always found endearing. Now it just made me sick. It's just some guys from the club, a poker debt. I'm handling it. I almost laughed. Richard was right. My husband was a liar. Just like me. 3 a.m. My phone buzzed with a text from Richard. They'll come for her next, unless you let me protect you. Across the hall, Lily slept peacefully, her stuffed bunny clutched in her arms. I made my decision. The safe house smelled like bleach and paranoia. Richard's driver had taken us there, in the dead of night. Lily asleep in my arms, her curls damp with sweat. Now she stirred in the unfamiliar bed, whimpering for her stuffed elephant left behind in our rushed escape. Where are we? I whispered as Richard checked the blinds. Somewhere his people can't find you. His cufflinks gleamed in the dim light as he handed me a burner phone. Use this. Your old one stays off. I stared at the cheap plastic device. For how long? His smile didn't reach his eyes. As long as it takes. Morning came with a knock. A woman in a black pantsuit entered without waiting, setting a manila folder on the table. Passports, bank statements, lease agreement for a flat in Nice. I nearly choked. France? Richard lit a cigar. You'll leave tonight. I never agreed to... You agreed the moment you got in that car. He flipped open the folder. New identities. My photo beside a name I didn't recognize. Sophie Laurent. Lily listed as Claire. My hands shook. This is kidnapping. No, he corrected softly. This is salvation. I waited until Richard left to power up my real phone. 23 missed calls from Mark. I dialed voicemail. His voice cracked through the speaker. Emily, please. I know about Kingsley. The PI has proof. Just come home. We'll fix this. The next message was worse. They're saying he's connected to the Bratva. Do you have any idea what you've gotten into? Where's Lily? Answer your goddamn... The door burst open. Richard stood there, my phone in his hand. Sentimentality will get her killed. He crushed the device under his Italian loafer. Lily colored quietly at the kitchen table when the gunshot rang out. I lunged for her as Richard drew a pistol from his waistband. Stay here, shouting in the hallway, a thud, then, Emily! Mark's voice. I ran to the door just in time to see Richard press the barrel to my husband's forehead. "No!" I screamed. Lily started crying behind me. Richard's finger tightened on the trigger. Time stopped when the gun fired. The sound was deafening, a single brutal crack that sent a flock of birds scattering outside the safe house window. Mark's body jerked backward, his head snapping to the side before he crumpled to the floor like a broken doll. Lily's scream tore through the air behind me. I didn't move. I couldn't. Richard lowered the gun, his face eerily calm. "You should have listened to me." Blood pooled beneath Mark's head, dark and thick, seeping into the cracks of the hardwood floor. His eyes were still open, staring at me, accusing me. Lily sobbed into my shoulder, her tiny fingers digging into my skin. "Daddy! I want Daddy!" Richard stepped over the body like it was nothing. "We need to leave. Now!" My legs wouldn't work. My lungs wouldn't fill with air. All I could see was Mark's wedding band glinting in the dim light, the same one I had slipped onto his finger 5 years ago. "Emily!" Richard's voice was sharp. "Move!" I forced myself to turn away. The car ride was a blur. Lily cried herself to sleep in the back seat while Richard barked orders into his phone in Russian. I caught only fragments. "Clean up, crew. Make it look like a robbery. No loose ends." I stared out the window, numb. The trees blurred into one long streak of green as we sped toward the private airfield. "You'll be in France by morning," Richard said, lighting a cigar. "They'll think he came after you, that you defended yourself. Self-defense." I didn't respond. He exhaled smoke. "You'll thank me later." The jet was waiting, engines humming. I carried Lily up the stairs, her weight the only thing keeping me grounded. Richard followed, his hand resting possessively on the small of my back. Then, "Mommy?" Lily's voice was small, scared. "Where's Daddy?" I looked down at her tear-streaked face and shattered. "I'm sorry," I whispered. "I'm so sorry." Richard's grip tightened. "Get on the plane." For the first time, I hesitated. The moment Richard turned to speak to the pilot, I acted. I shoved him hard, sending him stumbling down the metal stairs. Then I grabbed Lily and ran. Shouts erupted behind me. A gunshot rang out, missing us by inches. I didn't look back. We didn't stop running until the trees swallowed us whole. Lily's legs gave out first. She collapsed against me, her breath coming in ragged sobs. Somewhere behind us, engines roared, Richard's men fanning out like wolves. "Mommy, I'm scared," she whimpered. I pressed a kiss to her damp forehead. "Close your eyes, baby. Count to 100. Like it's a game. Like we're not fighting for our lives." Sarah's safe house should have been salvation. My childhood best friend didn't ask questions when I showed up bleeding at 3 a.m. She just ushered us inside, locking the door behind us. "I saw the news," she whispered, handing me a towel. "They're saying Mark was murdered during a home invasion. They're saying you and Lily are missing." I choked back a scream. Missing. Like we were victims. Like we hadn't been there when the trigger was pulled. Then Lily piped up from the couch. "Aunt Sarah, where's Daddy's phone?" Sarah froze. "What?" "The man said to bring it." The room tilted. Sarah's face changed. Just for a second. But it was enough. "You called him," I breathed. She backed toward the kitchen. "Emily, listen." I saw the glint of metal before she cleared the drawer. The gunshot was louder than I expected. Sarah slumped against the refrigerator, blood blooming across her blouse. The gun slipped from her fingers as she gasped one word. "Run!" Lily screamed. I grabbed her hand and bolted, just as headlights flooded the driveway. Richard stepped out of the car, his suit immaculate, his smile glacial. "Emily," he chided, "did you really think you could leave me?" The cliff edge crumbled under my heels. Behind us, Richard's men, guns drawn. Below us, black waves churning against jagged rocks. Lily clung to me, shaking. "Mommy, I can't swim." I kissed her tears. "Hold your breath," and jumped. Salt. Cold. Darkness. The current ripped Lily from my arms. I fought the waves, screaming her name, then strong hands dragged me onto the rocks. A familiar voice growled, "You're harder to kill than I thought." I looked up into the eyes of the man I'd watched die hours earlier. Mark, alive, and holding a gun to Richard's head. I screamed, "Mark, you are alive."
Mind blown. Did you seriously just read that twist? Drop a fire emoji in the comments if you never saw Mark coming back. Vault Keepers, y'all are legends. Smash that like button, subscribe to Top Stories Vault, and turn on notifications so you never miss a scandalous story. Returning viewers, you're the real MVPs. Comment Lily deserved better if you're ready for a sequel. Click now for more twisted tales, because trust me, this isn't the last you've seen of Richard Kingsley.